energized enough to do it a while ago, but I realize I'm taking on too much and my body is giving out. So I'm going to give it about 15 minutes, then we'll get a panel going. I'll continue with the panel, and we'll go from there and just see where it goes. Now, I can do a workshop tomorrow morning with a capital W for anybody that wants to sign up for it. Just let me know before I leave so I can be here to do that or be wherever it needs to be. Okay, so any questions? Dialogue. I'm inviting dialogue here, and that's exactly what I'm going to be doing in Europe in September and October. I want to hear how you feel about politics, about ways in which new energy technologies can be advanced more expeditiously, how it is that I once had these solid credentials and could easily call important people and get paid for my gigs very handsomely. And as I get more and more relevant, how I feel anyway, about what really needs to be done in the whole energy situation, the more I feel like I've fallen between the cracks and is this some sort of crazy planet of apes that we're on, and that we just kind of live out our lives here and do the best we can and hope that future generations can handle the situation. But anyway, some of you heard me speak, some of you didn't, I guess. Basically what I said around midday here is that, I mean, I've been in the new energy game now for about 15 years, and I've seen, visited with many, many inventors. If we had a slide projector, I could show you lots of nice, pretty pictures that I took of the various inventors on 5 different continents. And it was getting very clear to me that the pattern was that each and every technology has been suppressed. There's been one thing or another that's kept it from seeing the light of day. And that in light of the fossil fuel crisis that we're in the midst of, it's about time that we have our voices heard and that we start to take some political action. And to that end, this panel will be discussing those questions in a few minutes. But the purpose of the next few minutes is for you to just ask questions, make comments, anything that's on your minds about new energy technology. And we can carry on in a more formal way tomorrow morning. Yes? Well, one of the things that I did was, first of all, I've been working with nonprofits for a while, so I'm beginning to learn more about the fact that so many of us are so distracted we lose sense of our greater vision, and that every organization or group needs a vision statement and a mission statement. A vision being, well, what is it that we want to achieve? And then how are we going to be able to achieve that? And to my way of thinking, and I've done a lot of thinking about this over the last year, and then I created this book, Miracle in the Void. Yes, I can, not Miracle in the Void, Re-inheriting the Earth, which addresses those questions. And I have in there a manifesto for sustainability. But it's more than just wanting sustainability for the Earth. I mean, obviously that's a worthy goal, and new energy is a very important part of that. But just as important, I think, is openness to greater knowledge. In other words, stop the suppression. And I think they go hand in hand, and I know that this would especially be of interest to this group. It seems that when I try to explicate this to various environmental groups, and I've tried, and I've shared my new book with various people like Lester Brown at World Watch and, some of the green groups, Amory Lovins. The greater knowledge bit, the part that has to do with being open to new ideas and greater knowledge seems to, it doesn't get much reaction among those groups, but it would with you. So what does that mean? It just means that some of the green groups do have political clout. There isn't much clout in this whole anti-suppression movement, although there is some. For example, Steve Greer and that whole disclosure project. Well, maybe that there can be alliances or overlap between those groups. And in fact, we were discussing some of this with Hal Fox at lunchtime about the question of, well, how can we organize? How can various groups organize and become, therefore, more synergistically effective? And what is it that we want to do? Exactly what is it? And what is the vision statement? What is the mission statement? And in fact, if somebody could nab one of those books on the back called Re-Inheriting the Earth, maybe what I can do is recite what I came up with, which is basically a manifesto for sustainability and greater truth. And let's see if I can find. Huh. Oh, I see. There's a little white thing that goes under the. Yeah. Okay, and let's see if I can find this. Yeah, this is what I call a manifesto for sustainability, a declaration of interdependence. And I say, whereas the ravages of humanity upon the natural environment and upon one another are no longer acceptable for our future and that of the planet and other living beings, therefore be it resolved that we, the citizens of the earth, declare our right to live with dignity in a healthy environment, free from the threat of war and from the suppression of new knowledge. To these ends, we now form a global democracy whose power shall guarantee the following results. 1, a sustainable environment. 2, the end of war. 3, the right of every person to food, shelter, meaningful work, health care, justice, and free access to knowledge. And 4, an ethic which ensures that these principles shall endure. Now, I'm sure we can all come up with our own language, but in a sense, I see those two things part of the opposite sides of the same coin. One being the green movement, which would like a sustainable future, and the other, the anti-suppression movement, which allows some of your ideas that you've been working on, tinkering around, to see the light of day. Yes? Oh yes, cultural creatives. Paul Ray. Yes. Yeah. Well, thanks. And I don't know whether you all heard that. It was brilliant sharing. And by the way, I highly recommend, not only for commercial reasons, not really commercial reasons, my new book, Re-inheriting the Earth, and I do talk about the cultural creative movement. This is a sociologist, his name is Paul Ray, who has taken various polls and found that people seem to fall in roughly in one of three categories. As I remember, there are the modernists. These are the people that really love technology such as it is, and the kind of people that would vote for Clinton, and more, better, faster, which is what our culture is all about. And then there are the heartlanders, the people that tend to be from the Bible Belt and would vote for Bush and want to kind of turn the clock back some. And then there are the cultural creatives, which I think he said was roughly 25% or 22% of the population. 25 now, which haven't really been heard from very much because they tend to be scattered and not want to vote and don't fall into any traditional political or other categories. And these are people that really want to see something new happen. And of the cultural creatives, the larger group are the Greens. And then there's, you say, the core group who are green but also want real change. They don't want knowledge to be suppressed. They see that there is a greater truth, that they want to ask such questions as what happens after death, and are we alone in the universe? 70 million. Yeah. Right. Right. So that's a large number of people, and they could be organized. And if you, I just, please do go out and keep doing that work. It's important work. It's probably much more important than developing the technologies, because the technologies are waiting in the wings for their opportunity. It's a matter of organizing and creating a constituency to support that. And I think you're right on. It's a very good observation. I do talk about that as well in my book, that we do need to organize these people, and there are a lot of us out there. Yes. Anybody else? Comments, questions, thoughts? Yeah. Yeah, the money game, of course, is just insidious. The the statistics are alarming. Like, what is it now? $3 trillion is exchanged every day in the so-called global casino. This is currency trading, speculation, and this is money that's not used in any productive way except to make fat cats even fatter. And the Europeans are considering what's called a Tobin Tax, which is a tax that could be levied on these international currency transactions, and a tax of 1/4% of, let's say, any international transaction of that kind would yield, I forget what it is. It's a huge amount of money. It's like tens of billions of dollars a year, which would be enough to fund free energy and any number of other things. At the very least, it certainly could fund, well, some of the Europeans are suggesting that it could be used to cancel third world debt. Also, of course, there's been discussion about a carbon tax, about a tax on any of the carbon dioxide that's thrown into the Earth's atmosphere in proportion to what's being emitted. $7.5 million a day. Billion. $3 trillion a day is 7.5 a day. I'm sorry, I got my statistics wrong. That's why I need some rest. Thanks for correcting me. Thank you. Yeah. Just numbers on a screen, yeah. Yeah, it's just numbers on a screen, basically. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Well, true. And you know, the other thing to think about is just the enormous slice of the gross world product that goes into energy, and as you pointed out, how food is the other big thing. 4.5 trillion per year in fossil fuels. We're really hooked. And how are we going to, I mean, this is David and Goliath if I've ever seen it. And of course, a good deal of that is the financial infrastructure surrounding fossil fuels. It has such a toehold. It's such an enormous vested interest. And it's held so sacrosanct by virtually every organization. And mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's right. That's right. And almost in a way, and that's what appeals, why this simultaneous policy I referred to earlier, my colleague from England, who has created this thing called the simultaneous policy, where there'll be some of us who will go on with business as usual, polluting and so forth, and greed and all that stuff that's going on, and then this other group chooses to adopt a different point of view simultaneously with all this other stuff going on. And then it builds, it builds, it builds until all countries ratify it. I mean, if you can get to all but one country ratifying Kyoto, certainly you could get all but one country ratifying this other, and then enormous moral pressure, and the day will come when it becomes implemented, and boom, there it is. I can't, I mean, I think that's a wonderful idea because we don't have time to evolve a new global green democracy or whatever you want to call it. I don't think we have time for that. Maybe I'm wrong. You know, maybe 50 years from now, people will finally get around to doing it. But yeah, well said. You bet. Anybody else? Anybody else? Well, maybe this is a good time to convene the panel, and what I want to do at this point is to introduce David Williams, who is an activist and a person who's like the Energizer bunny for Energizer rabbits. He won't take no for an answer, but will continue his peace and environmental energy solutions activism. He'll just keep doing it in the face of one man against 3 billion people or whatever. So, David, why don't you take charge now, and I'll hang out for a little bit longer, and then I think I'm going to disappear.
Thank you very much. Would you like to come and sit, Dr. Wood? Would you like to? Well, while everybody's getting seated, I'll basically introduce myself, and also I want to introduce Dr. Wood. You've all heard from Hal Fox here at the Exotic Research Conference. You know, he's the editor of the New Age, of the Journal of New Energy, and associated with the Institute for New Energy. You heard his talk yesterday in his paper, which we'll deliver tomorrow to the governor's office and the California Energy Commission's office. And you just heard from Dr. O'Leary, who, among his many credentials and technical paper authors and books, the thing that sticks in my mind is Science and Energy Policy Advisor and speechwriter for 4 presidential candidates. So I hope when we go there tomorrow, we'll make an impression on the governor's office and the Energy Commission office that they'll take seriously and listen to what carefully investigate the information that's presented. By way of background, I'm an activist. I'm also, my education is in chemistry, and my business experience is in sales and sales management. But I went on to become interested in the science, the chemical physics of consciousness. And for a number of years, I've been involved with peace walk activities, taking it up initially from the same teacher that Gandhi took up a certain drum and a prayer back in 1976. So last year we did the Global Peace Walk 2000, walking from San Francisco to New York. And these last peace walks, what we've been doing is gathering messages that we think are important for the future of the Earth, and then delivering them at the end at some occasion, in this case last year to Washington, D.C. and to the United Nations. This year I'm working on doing a 2-hour, 1-day peace walk this Christmas, the 2000th Christmas, from Bethlehem to Jerusalem, thinking that's going to capture the public imagination around the world, and well, what messages are coming? Well, this is part of the message that this walk will be carrying. Today I did a little couple of blocks, tomorrow a little bit more, walking to the Capitol. So what I wanted to introduce the one panelist before I go too far with my own remarks, who you haven't seen yet. Dr. Fred Wood drove in today from San Jose. Dr. Wood originally was studying sociology, meaning he has a real social conscience and an inclination in the 1930s. And at that time, people were worried that Hitler was going to take over the world, so he changed his major to electrical engineering and got his bachelor's and master's and PhD in electrical engineering. Went on to become basically one of the pioneers in the field of electronics engineering, one of the founders of systems theory. Has a deep knowledge of the what's called the original quaternion form of Maxwell's equations, complex mathematics, to give a deeper understanding of electromagnetism, maybe how Tesla did some of what he did. And he's knowledgeable in the torsion field theory that the Russians are working on, feels that that has real-time applications for telescopes that can see beyond the limit of light and so forth, and also the quantum vacuum flux, not only has a zero-point energy component. I'm going to trying to summarize what I'm thinking he's going to talk about so he can elaborate, but also an energy field component. Basically, I'm concerned because, you know, in 1988, I heard saw a videotape of a presentation by Adam Trombley, and among the things he talked about, besides his energy inventions, was the state of the environment, and that at that time he predicted from their climate modeling that by 10 years later, by 1998, if we didn't fix the problem, that not only the global warming, the climate change from the extra CO2 in the atmosphere, but the amount of oxygen that's being consumed, burned up, is reducing the oxygen tension. That's contributing to the ozone layer depletion. So he said that by 1998, if we didn't fix it, which we haven't, that inevitably 10 years later, that's 2008, a few years from now, the ozone layer will be thin enough where all the phytoplankton would be destroyed by solar irradiation. That's over half of Earth's oxygen supply and the beginning of the oceanic food chain. So I don't know if that's the worst case scenario. I mean, it sounds like the worst case scenario that I ever heard, but I don't know if it's really going to come to pass, but it's motivated me to really do as much as I can. So what I did for this occasion was I wrote to the mayors of 6 California cities who gave us proclamations for the Global Peace Walk project, proclamations of support. And I asked for their support to help open the governor of California to investigate this information very seriously on the new energy technologies. And I delivered to them each in the last couple of weeks a copy of Gene Manning's book, The Coming Energy Revolution, and a packet of information which I wanted to leave each of you so you have a duplicate copy. The pages were in different orders depending on which mayor I gave it to and so forth. But basically I have taken the approach that whether they listen or not, the government agencies in charge of these energy issues need to be put on public notice that of this information, and the public, perhaps through the media, to demand that they look into it further. So first I began with 1998 with the Department of Energy had public hearings, and they came out with this, what they call Comprehensive National Energy Strategy. So there's a passing mention, public comments about this zero-point energy field, and we got a letter from the DOE afterwards saying, wow, any technology that could harness this would be the holy grail of energy research. And this last year, also a number of us put in information that's also on a website on the Department of Energy's strategic plan. So now it's nothing's come back, so now we're going to go to the state government tomorrow and see what can be accomplished by virtue of that. So it seems like our planning dynamic is a little overly fluid here, and I can probably think of a lot more things to say, but I'm feeling like I better turn over the microphone, and I'm interested to hear particularly things that brainstorm ideas of what the concerns might be of the government, the state of California, and what maybe the governor or the Energy Commission can do to help bring these to fruition. And perhaps maybe would you like to?
Well, I find that there are 9 groups within American society that are blocking the development of over unity engines. Some of them not conscious that they're doing so, because we have the interaction of these 9 groups, like there are 2 governmental groups, those who don't have any training in science. They rely on leading scientists to tell them what's right, and they call them, and the leading scientists say, well, there can't be anything such thing as the over-unity engine because a perpetual motion machine is not possible. See? And the government employees who do know something about it do a little better, but when they go up in the chain of command to get approval from a project, they get the same thing from their bosses. Okay. All right. So then, in business, we have similar groups: the administrative people and the scientists. And well, for example, I worked for IBM for 27 years, And every few weeks, one of the top administrators come on and remind me not to say anything critical of the oil companies. That they're our best customer, so we shouldn't say anything about the impact of burning fossil fuels on the environment. And then you take political groups. An example is Ralph Nader tried to develop an understanding of what we were talking about over unity engines. So he, some months before the last election, he called one of the senior physicists, UC Berkeley, and said, "Can you give me an evaluation and explanation of what this is all about?" And the top physicist said, "We can't be bothered with anything like that. We're busy with more important problems, see." And then the newspapers are feel hampered. They're younger reporters reporting something, and they're told by the senior editors, "You can't publish stuff like that." And then we have the military controlling part of it. We've got, with our military classification of over unity engines is top secret, the intent of the law and the rules giving the military that right were to prevent potential enemies from knowing about new inventions like over unity engines that we were developing. But the Russians already know about most of these things. So the Chinese, everyone else is a potential enemy. The Arabs don't know too much, but they're learning quickly, and so on. And so we're preventing our own engineers, or class after class of engineers don't know anything about these because their textbooks still have the limited version of Maxwell's equations where certain terms have been dropped out as being not necessary for them to know in order to design radio systems, telephone systems, TV systems, radar systems. Well, I'll say that in the early 1950s, Joseph Stalin got wind that there was a problem here in electromagnetic theory. So he called the top scientists of the Union together and said, "Let's have a task force to find out what the problem is. Why haven't we got over unity engines? Why haven't we got new weapons using electromagnetic waves?" And they made considerable progress in the Soviet Union. And we see considerable evidence of either the Russians or people that they're renting some of their new weapons to test, like with TA-800 in July 1996, where it blew up. It matches the pattern reported of one of the weapons the Russians developed for blowing up airplanes. That is, they have developed the capability, sending powerful radar stations in Kazakhstan and farther north in a section of Siberia. They can send radar waves around the Earth, and the two beams would intersect over New York City, over JF Kennedy Airport, and they could read, they get the reflections back of the pattern of planes taking off there, and they would have, of course, the timetables and schedules that they could pick a particular plane taking off from JF Kennedy that they wanted to disable or shoot down from the controllers on the other side of the world. Now, we don't know how far our own developments have gone on that because that's all classified top secret, but the Russians already know those things. See? So, and we're, well, now the next item involved here is that we look at the history of civilization, we find that few thousands of years ago, mankind was making about one invention per year, and then it moved up 2 or 3 per century, and it went on a deep, very steep curve up through Greece, and then dropped off, and then with the Romans it went up and dropped off, and then the Arabs pushed it up, and then since then we've been going up and up and up number of inventions. So, but we find that the financial managers in Wall Street don't want so many inventions because they want to extend the life of the profits they can make from the inventions we already have. So, most celebrated case of this is Nikola Tesla, and in the 1880s he invented the polyphase electric circuits that were much more efficient than Edison's DC system. And then near the end of the 1880s and early 1890s, he completed the electric power generating systems in Niagara Falls, which demonstrated we could make great use of hydropower to generate electricity. You didn't have to burn coal for as much of our electric power that way. And then in 1904, Tesla was working on the next phase. He had independently discovered that something was wrong with the Maxwell's equations in the textbooks. They didn't seem to. He could measure waves that were not predicted by the equations in the textbooks. So he called upon the professors of Europe, say, why don't you fix the textbooks, give the correct full equation? And they said, well, they're too complicated for those dumb engineers to understand. But Tesla said, well, I'm a dumb engineer and I understand them. But anyway, when J.P. Morgan, 1904, heard how far Tesla was going in plans to develop electric generating system, was give almost free power to the American people. He was horrified. He said, there's no place in this free energy system with over-unity engines for us to place watt meters to measure how much power people get so we can charge them for it. See? So J.P. Morgan forced artificial bankruptcy of Tesla Electric. That is, he requested all the banks and stockbrokers to call their loans due early on all the money's loaned to the Tesla Electric, so the company pulled it up, and then we have the sheriff's deputy seized his measuring equipment and tools in the bankruptcy proceedings, so Tesla was stuck with no laboratory, it was functional, no tools and equipment. But to quiet Tesla up, they gave him a pension for the rest of his working lifetime, not for his retirement, but they gave him free room on board the New Yorker hotel to run until the normal retirement time. He spent a lot of his time feeding the pigeons in the parks of New York, but in the meantime he was still thinking. So he developed a number of potential weapons in theory, and also what defense could be developed against those, which he wrote down in his notebooks. But nobody took him very seriously at that time. But when in the 1950s Stalin got wind of that, he had committees of scientists work on picking up all the clues that Tesla had left in his notebooks to see if they really could develop these weapons. So that, now, I haven't covered an important feature about the impact on the environment of burning fossil fuels, the history of man's energy resources is that in an earlier stage, small cities, in order to get enough minerals in the soil to grow enough food, they have to cut down each year a section of forest, burn the trees to get the ashes to put more minerals in the soil, but that only lasts about 3 or 4 years. So then they have to, but that's you find around Central America, civilizations didn't survive very well that way. Pretty soon they burned down all the forests in their area, and also in other parts of the world. But in the meantime, the human brain was slowly getting larger and more logical elements. So if we utilized our capability of higher intelligence, we could figure out what to do about it. So this in 1904, this idea that developed by Tesla, that we could utilize what we now call the quantum vacuum flux for electricity, would be almost free, and there would be no damage to the environment. So it would also have the impact that if people feel we don't have to go to war to secure sources of fuel like coal, oil, gas, and if everyone has all the electricity that they want, we'd have a much more peaceful world. There'd be much less incentive for the people to support any wars. So it appears has now become the primary cause in suppressing over-unity engines is to prevent the people from knowing that they can have a source of electricity that doesn't cost very much, almost free. So this is perpetrating the need for developing World War III if we keep on suppressing the development of over-unity engines for generation of electricity. Now, I'll show you when. Well, let's see. I'll go back to when I started considering these ideas. Well, let's see. We want to put this up on is your projector there so people can see this chart, this diagram. Now just check to be sure. Yeah, okay. What I have here is a space map. This is the sun, and here are the different planets in their paths. And if we plot the sun is emitting ordinary electromagnetic waves plus other components. Yeah, okay. They're shown by these arrows coming this way, but this only a very small fraction of the sun's energy is being picked up by these planets here, and the rest of its energy is going to infinity and back. And here we show energy coming back in these narrower arrows from also some of the energy coming from other solar systems. Now, we don't have too precise a theory what goes on in the quantum vacuum, but it appears that there's an oscillating effect. The energy is shifting back and forth in something like more like particles and more electric charge, and so this energy that's coming back and the energy being freshly emitted is mixed together in the quantum vacuum, so quantum vacuum is accumulating more energy, so we have tremendous amount of energy that we could tap here. Now, if we look at this, the problem of tapping this energy is more like designing radio antennas. We design a dipole antenna that enables us to couple to the energy in the quantum vacuum. We have a much simpler job of designing our over-unity engines. Now, Lieutenant Colonel retired Tom Bearden has some concept of how it's similar to designing radio dipoles. He has been working on that. But our typical electrical engineers who've been trained with a text that just does not give the complete theory, Tom Bearden feels the way they design electric generators is that they're actually, by mistake, due to their ignorance, they are coupling energy from the quantum vacuum field and then throwing it away. And then they're claiming that the cost of generating this energy is from the fossil fuels that we burn, whereas that we're really building the dipoles in the quantum vacuum, and then we take a small amount of energy and we destroy the dipoles, and the next cycle we build new dipoles. So we're using our energy to do useless work that isn't, it's sending more energy on from the Earth out to outer space rather than making it available for us to use here. It's very difficult to get people to understand the mechanism of this. I've tried talking to astronomers in Berkeley, you say Berkeley, and see, the astronomers can devise instruments to measure the energy in this type, the energy coming back, so it give us a more scientific basis of what's going on, but they don't seem to be interested in it. But I found a Russian astrophysicists particularly are studying this, and the Russians have developed a system. So if they have a telescope here on the Earth, they want to measure this energy coming in, or this, they're able to separate out the ordinary electromagnetic waves and the torsion waves. Now the torsion waves travel faster than the speed of light, and the regular electromagnetic waves travel at the speed of light. And for the Russians to take a photograph, say, of the sun using these two, where they separate these two waves, they design filters so as the light comes into the telescope, they have a double layer photographic film, two types of the film that responds to different wavelengths, so that they get two photographic plates, and then they scan into computer and run a very complex Fourier transformation calculation, and they can get two images of what they're looking at. They can get an image of what the sun looks like 9 minutes ago when the ordinary waves came in, and then they can get an image of how the sun looks just a few milliseconds before then, by using the torsion waves. And the Russians have given reports on this system to the U.S. government, but I don't see anything mentioned about it. Maybe I'm not reading the right literature, but anyway. I got one report from the Russians on their work with the physical vacuum, but they cut out chapter 5 of the book they gave me. The role of the torsion fields and the ordinary electromagnetic waves, we get a better idea of what our problem is in utilizing this energy from the quantum vacuum. So maybe I'll sign off now, and we'll hear from Dr. Fox on the torsion field.
Thank you. I'm the editor of the Journal of New Energy, and they credit our journal with publishing the first Russian articles in the West about torsion fields. Each of the 6 articles that we've published indicate that the speed of the torsion field fluctuations travel at least 10 to the 9th, 1 billion times faster than the speed of light, almost instantaneous. Extremely interesting. Another publication we published in the Journal of New Energy is a device by that can measure fluctuations, and these fluctuations come from all over space. It's very interesting. Part of this instrument is just a capacitor where the plate is sitting in the gravitational field. Now the torsion fields come in 3 different kinds. There's a gravity torsion fields, there's spin torsion fields, there's magnetic torsion fields. And the fluctuations in all cases travel at this enormously much faster than the speed of light. Well, this device that they've developed takes the vibrations, measures the fluctuations in the gravity, and it's very, very interesting. Those who are trying to track flying saucers, for example, or to see if there's intelligent beyond the solar system, are using radio waves to scan the heavens and see if they get information. Well, they're looking in the wrong area. Anyone with a degree of sense, of new science sense, as I'm sure our extraterrestrials would be, are certainly not communicating with something that travels as slow as radio waves. Well, that's one of the aspects that we've done with the Journal of New Energy. But more important for our group here and for the immediate future is that we've been able to identify, out of the 60 different new energy devices that are listed on the internet, most of them are not really commercially practical in our sense. So we have set up some criteria to say how hot should a new energy device be to have commercial practicality, to really be commercialized. One of the things we've said, it has to be at least 3 times as fast, 3 times as much energy out as energy input. And the reason for this is many of the devices put electrical energy in and get thermal energy out. And so it's about a ratio in cost of electric to thermal energy of about 3 to 1. Second thing we require is that the energy source is revealed, and it's an enormous energy source. Not uranium is an enormous energy source, but it's very limited. If we started building many power plants, one of these times I guess we'd run out of uranium. It'd become very expensive. So of the 4 devices, one of them is a small benign nuclear device. One of them is the Randall Mills device, and it gets its energy from a new type of chemical energy of collapsing the hydrogen atom electrons below their ground state. The other 2, the high-density charge cluster phenomena, which our company has acquired exclusive rights to the 6 patents that have issued, it taps the energy of space. Now, the energy of space, if you could take all of the energy in the space, the volume of, say, just that cup, and turn it all into thermal energy, you could boil the Atlantic Ocean. Now, this is an enormous amount of energy. As Dr. Wood pointed out, energy has been pouring out into space for many years. This energy, however, is difficult to tap, and there's still some arguments among scientists as whether the energy can be tapped. And we're saying, yes, it can. We're doing it in our laboratory. And what we want to do now is to get sufficient funds to be able to tap that energy resource and turn it into usable energy to run our homes and our offices. And we have a contract to build an onboard battery charger for electric vehicles. And that will just tap the energy of space around us, charge the batteries in electric vehicles. So you can see we're terribly excited about the concept of this new energy. We think that as soon as we get the funding which had been promised to us, we will be able to demonstrate within much less than a year that we can take the highly radioactive spent fuel pellets from nuclear power plants and stabilize them so these fuel pellets then become much, much less radioactive and perhaps no more radioactive than the ground around us. The next step is we'll use this charge cluster technology. It's the patent number 5018180 is the first patent in our knowledge to say that the energy that is provided comes from tapping the energy of space, or vacuum energy, or zero-point energy. So this is, we think, a marvelous development in the new energy field. Why don't the scientists, no universities have adopted, with one exception, have adopted any of this new energy technology. So the students being trained are not trained at all in these new energy technologies. However, I think it's been quite interestingly stated that scientists believe what they're paid to believe. So as soon as the government does realize here are some commercial devices being commercialized, they're going to have the university start teaching that kind of thing, and they'll give some contracts for some university professors to study this new energy technology. So that's my contributions from this panel. I really think that we're on the verge, just lacking some funds, we're on the verge of really providing the world with some new energy technologies.
I wish to apologize for not keeping up with reading the literature too well. So I should be reading your journal to know how far you've gone with it. I've been depending on getting articles from Russia. And I'm glad you're doing the work you are of bringing updated material.
Okay, well, I think we can wind up. Basically, this is just an overview. We'll make some use of this tape, but the basic idea is tomorrow, by the good fortune of the Exotic Research Conference having been convened here and brought Brian O'Leary and Hal Fox and Dr. Wood able to come from San Jose. So tomorrow, with some supporters, we're going to go to the governor's office. We're going to go to the California Energy Commission office late morning, and we're going to walk in with the video and all these experts and give them some papers and say, okay, and talk to them a little bit and say, we want to put you on record that you got this information. What are you going to do with it? Thank you very much.